In these fraught political times, Congressman Mike Lawler decides to run for re-election. Now, I know that this is an effort to help you keep control of the House, but this is like a fungible thing that's going on now with everything that's going on in Texas and other states. And I do want to talk about your bill, but first I want to talk about the fact that President Trump is now saying he wants to recensus the whole country so that we can eliminate undocumented from the census count. I wonder if you think that is a good idea.
Well, if you look back, I mean, colleagues like Yvette Clarke have been on the record saying that part of the reason why they support sanctuary policies is because it helps give them more folks to count in the census, meaning New York gets more congressional seats and more electoral votes. This has been a long brewing fight about whether or not undocumented immigrants should be counted as part of the census. In my view, they should not. Lawful immigrants, legal permanent residents, green card holders, those here on a visa should. And so that's something obviously that is going to be discussed. But it goes to a bigger point right now, which is there really aren't that many competitive congressional seats in the country. And so control of Congress is very slim. We have very slim margin in the House. My seat is one of only 3 in the country in which Kamala Harris won, and a Republican is representing it. And so this is going to be a big fight heading into 2026. Democrats and Republicans in blue states, red states fighting over redistricting. It's laughable to watch Kathy Hochul because, number one, Democrats in New York did try to gerrymander our maps in 2022, and they were slapped down by the Court of Appeals for violating the state constitution and violating the will of the voters.
But yet you have a bill that you want to outlaw gerrymandering, which would also outlaw what the people in Texas want to do, right? Entirely.
Look, gerrymandering is a disaster for our country. When you look at 435 House seats, only 35 were decided by 5 points or less last November. Only 35. Mine wasn't one of them. I won by 6.5 points. So when you look at the competitive nature of these districts, this is why they're trying to gerrymander across the state. And remember, New York did mid-decade redistricting just last year. Because they didn't like the outcome of the 2022 elections, they unceremoniously removed Janet DeFiore as chief judge. They stacked the court. They got the court to order new maps be drawn. Then they tried to gerrymander it again, picked up 3 seats, and now they want to go for a third bite at the apple. You look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin had a Supreme Court race earlier this year. The whole fight was over whether or not they would be able to redistrict. And now, of course, you see what Texas is doing. California is threatening. This is destructive to the country. I don't like gerrymandering. I think it is wrong. I think our country would be better served if you had more competitive districts all across the country in which members of Congress had to appeal to a general election audience as opposed to just talking to their respective bases.
So given the fact that Washington is a very, very partisan place and Republicans in your party control both houses of Congress, what chance does your bill have of passing and preventing Texas and actually your president from trying to get this passed and to gerrymander some seats to redistrict mid-census?
Look, this is a tit for tat that we're seeing. And again, I remind everybody, New York already did mid-decade redistricting just last year. So for Kathy Hochul now to say she's outraged about mid-decade redistricting, that's exactly what happened in New York. But this is fundamentally wrong. It's why I am going to be introducing legislation to ban gerrymandering, ban mid-decade redistricting. We're going to build consensus and fight to get it done. But this is something that universally, I think most Americans would agree. The idea that you're going to pick who your constituents are by gerrymandering the map is wrong. You look at Illinois. They gerrymandered the map so badly that there's only 3 Republicans representing the state in Congress. Meanwhile, uniformly, in election after election, Republicans are getting 40+% of the vote in Illinois.
So do you think that your bill would lead to more Republican seats, less Republican seats, or just more competitive seats and let the chips fall where they may?
I think it will lead to fairer elections. Look at New York. The map that we had in 2022, that was drawn by a court-appointed special master resulted in Republicans winning 11 of 26 seats. Now we control 7. The map allows for, broadly speaking, us to go from anywhere from 6 to 11. That is good for New York. That's good for the country. It allows for competition. It means that these seats matter. It means that we can debate the issues. By the way, a major issue like SALT wouldn't have happened if I and some of my New York colleagues weren't down in Washington. We got that done because we were the difference between having a Republican majority or not. And so we had the ability to exert ourselves in that process.
Well, I think we should also point out that while you are a Republican, you won in a district that has, I think, 20,000 more.
80,000 more Democrats than Republicans. And look, I've been rated the 4th most bipartisan member of Congress. I was the #1 most effective freshman member. I passed 11 bills. 6 were signed into law by President Biden. It is precisely because I've been able to work across the aisle to get things done. If more members were in districts like mine and had to do that, Washington would function a lot better than it does.
Well, so you also have another bill that's sort of interesting to me, and that is that you want to have affordable and available child care, which is something that we've seen in the mayoral race here, where Mr. Mamdani had Elizabeth Warren come in just this past week to talk about the need to have universal child care. Is this something that you think you can build consensus on among Republicans and Democrats?
Well, part of the One Big Beautiful bill included expanding the child care tax credit and expanding out the ability of employers to help provide child care access. So we had significant wins when it comes to child care, but I think this is an issue that impacts everybody regardless of party. I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 9-month-old. I'm fortunate. We moved my in-laws here to live with us after I got elected to Congress, and it's been a tremendous help. But not everybody is able to do that. And, you know, my wife and I both work. That is essential to be able to provide for our families. So child care access is critical. I think this is something that all of us as Republicans and Democrats can and should work on together. You look at the fact that our birth rate has declined precipitously over the last 15 years. Our marriage rate has declined. A big part of this is because of the cost of living and the cost of child care. It is very difficult for people to raise a family, especially in high tax areas like New York.
So another thing that I wanted to talk about that's been going on in the Trump administration has been the tariffs. And, you know, Kathy Hochul over the past week has been talking about the lack of businesses on the border, the northern border with Canada, you know, fewer tourist businesses being hurt. I wonder what you think the effect of the tariffs are here in New York and whether there should be some changes.
Yeah, as I've said from the beginning, tariffs as a short-term negotiating tool to force fair trade can be effective. And we've already seen with Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, the EU, those trade deals coming online, that they have been an effective tool for that purpose. Canada and Mexico in particular are entirely reliant on the U.S. economy. And ultimately, they're going to have to cut a trade deal with the United States and come to an agreement. Obviously, long term, we want great cooperation between Canada and the United States. The North Country, Western New York, are way more reliant on Toronto and Montreal as economic engines than they are New York City. That's just a reality
right now,
of the situation.
It's really hurt New York.
Look, we've seen obviously a little bit of a slowdown in terms of tourism, especially coming from Canada, some of the businesses. But I fundamentally believe as we get the tax bill finalized and implemented, you start to engage in deregulation, you increase domestic production of energy, you get these trade deals online, the economy is going to boom. And I think upstate New York in particular will see a benefit. But here's the fundamental problem. Kathy Hochul can point the finger at that. New York leads the nation in outmigration for a reason. It has nothing to do with the weather or tariffs. It has everything to do with the high cost of living, the high cost of doing business, the declining quality of life. New York has the highest tax burden in the nation, the worst and most burdensome business regulations in the country. That is at her hand. And she has done nothing to fix that. And in fact, what she has done has created a situation where an avowed socialist is on the verge of becoming mayor of New York City.
Congressman, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We are back with Congressman Mike Lawler, so we have to talk about the New York City mayor's race and the, I guess, discussions that are going on in Washington with President Trump trying to decide whether he should take a role in this race. Now, I know that you were in the Oval Office and you did speak with him about the race. What was the conversation like?
Well, I met with him a few weeks ago about a number of things, including Congress, the governor's race, the mayor's race. He's a New Yorker at heart. He cares about New York, doesn't want to see it go south, as we've seen under terrible leadership from Hochul and de Blasio and now Adams. But I think, his focus was on who can actually win, who ultimately can win. And the reality is, so long as they're all in the race, nobody can win.
So did you discuss with him who you thought would be the strongest candidate against Mr. Mamdani?
We went through, each of the candidates, the pros, the cons, but, I think ultimately those candidates are going to have to come to a realization come Labor Day. Whoever is in the best position, everybody has to put party aside. They have to put their egos aside. They have to do what's right for New York and the country. Having an avowed socialist, a Marxist, talking about seizing the means of production, banning private property ownership, legalizing prostitution, shutting down prisons, defunding the police, freezing the rent, government-run grocery stores. Having that individual lead the largest city in the country, the financial capital of the world, is a disaster for America. So I think ultimately, obviously, this is going to be a choice for the people of New York, but it's going to be up to the candidates to do right by the city and put their egos aside.
But see, there are three candidates. One is a Republican.
Yep.
So there's Curtis Lewa, the Republican. Mm-hmm. There's Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, and there's the current mayor, Eric Adams. So are you saying that whoever is best in the polls, the other two should drop out, even if it means Curtis Lewa?
Yeah. I fundamentally believe, and I support Curtis, but I fundamentally believe whoever is best positioned in a one-on-one race based on the polling come Labor Day, everybody else needs to do right by the city. This is not about party politics. This isn't about President Trump. Zoran would love to make it about President Trump and not have to actually defend his policy ideas to a general election audience, because there is no way in hell that New Yorkers would say that Marxism is good. And so this is something where I think ultimately, come Labor Day, these folks are going to have to do what's right.
So does the president have a role in helping that happen by offering one or two people jobs in his administration or opportunities for other employment to help them to ease the path of getting out?
No, I don't think so when it comes to that. I think ultimately this will come down to whether or not people put their egos aside, rally behind one of the candidates that can win, and it's going to be incumbent on everybody, Republicans, conservatives, independents, conservative Democrats, to say this is about the city, this is about the state and the country. It's not about party politics.
You've been in politics a while. What's the chance of people putting their egos aside?
Probably slim to none.
Exactly. So did the president, just one more question, did the president ask you for advice about what he should do?
No, we had a more broad conversation on a whole host of topics.
But did he say, like, I think so-and-so would be the better?
No, he didn't drill down on who, but he cares, and I think that's something that New Yorkers should understand. He's a New Yorker at heart, whether he lives in Florida or not. He cares about this city. He does not want to see an avowed socialist take the helm.
So you have to face re-election in 2026. There are already 7 Democrats that want to take
up to 8 as of this week.
8? Oh, excuse me, I lost one. So there's up to 8 people who want to take you out. You have to face one of them in a general election. Does that point to the fact that the Democrats think you're vulnerable and that they could take you out?
Well, look, I've won 3 times in 2-to-1 Democratic districts. And it's not because of my good looks and charming personality. It's because I talk about the issues that matter and I deliver on them. Delivering on SALT is a big win for my district. 90% of my constituents will be able to fully deduct their state and local taxes. We have the highest property taxes in the country in Westchester and Rockland and Putnam counties. So this is a big win. I'm proud of the record that I've been able to amass. I serve as chair of the Middle East and North Africa subcommittee. I've focused extensively on Israel and combating anti-Semitism, securing our border, stopping the massive influx of illegal immigration, obviously the affordability issues with getting the tax bill passed. So I'm proud of my record. I think the fact that they have 8 candidates speaks to the clown car that is their primary, and frankly that they can't unify behind a single candidate. Meanwhile, you know, the party is fully unified behind me. We're outraising them. I have more cash on hand than them, and we're going to continue to deliver for the district.
You know, you raised the issue of the Middle East and Gaza, and there have been a number of people who have now talked about the fact that we need to give humanitarian aid to Gaza because people are starving. How do you come down on that? I mean, is this a nonpartisan issue? Is this something that you see Democrats moving more towards? What's going on?
Well, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. The reason the Palestinian people are in the situation they're in is because of Hamas, a terrorist organization that for 20 years has ruled with an iron thumb, using their own people as human shields, withholding aid and support, killing them indiscriminately. And the reality is Israel and the United States have been working to provide humanitarian assistance. Why is it that the United Nations refuses to work with the U.S. and Israel to deliver that humanitarian assistance? Meanwhile, Russia, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, why aren't they demanding they provide humanitarian assistance to the Ukrainians that they have indiscriminately slaughtered? There is a double standard in the way that this is looked upon. The fact is Hamas cannot remain in power. They continue to hold Israelis and Americans hostage. You have a deceased American from New York who needs to be returned home to his family, Omer Nutra. We should be demanding Hamas surrender. That is the fastest way for this conflict to end and for humanitarian assistance to be surged into Gaza to support the innocent Palestinian people. But people should understand one thing. Hamas has continued throughout this entire conflict to refuse to the terms of a ceasefire, refuse to release the hostages, continues to use their own people as human shields, and has sought to loot the humanitarian assistance that has been provided repeatedly.
Some people might suggest that the reason why there's been this reluctance on the part of Hamas to do this is because once they turn over all the hostages, they might be in danger of losing their control over the territory.
Correct. That's the whole fundamental problem
So
here.
what does the United States do?
They took the hostages for a reason. They took them as a bargaining chip. They took them to try and remain in power, knowing full well that Israel was going to conduct a war to eliminate the threat. And so ultimately, Israel's going to have to make a difficult but necessary decision to go into Gaza City and eliminate the remaining Hamas terrorists, period.
And what will the United States position be when Israel does that?
We should stand by them.
And do you think we will? I mean,
under President Trump, we will.
I mean, it seems to be there's a lot of dissension in Washington about what our policy should be and whether we should support the administration of Bibi Netanyahu.
Look, the Middle East today is in a better place than it was prior to October 7th. Hamas and Hezbollah are largely decimated. The Assad regime has fallen in Syria. Iran's air defenses and nuclear program are basically obliterated. The Saudis and the Gulf states want normalization. They want economic cooperation. That would not have happened but for the way that Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF have conducted this war. Hamas must be eliminated and defeated. That is the only way you can have long-standing peace, and that is the only way the Palestinian people will be free from their oppressor, Hamas.
So let's talk about the gubernatorial race. You decided not to run. You're running for re-election. The Republicans are happy about that because they think that you can hold the seat. But let's talk about the gubernatorial race. What happens in terms of Kathy Hochul, and who's the Republican that ends up running against her? So far, Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau County executive, and Elise Stefanik, an upstate congresswoman, have said they're not going to make their decision until after the November elections. Is that smart to wait so long when Kathy Hochul is out there raising money?
Well, look, Bruce obviously is running for re-election in Nassau County Executive. He needs to focus on that and get re-elected. He's done a great job out there, and I think he will have a resounding victory, especially with Zohran Mamdani on the ballot in New York City and bordering Nassau County. Elise obviously has made her intentions clear that she is considering this. I think Elise needs to make a decision sooner than later. I think, frankly, it's a disservice to the party to wait that long. The fact is, we need to kick it into high gear. Kathy Hochul is a disaster. She is the worst governor in the country. She is feckless. She is incompetent. She has run this state into the ground. And voters deserve a choice. And so I think it's incumbent upon Elise, who made it clear she wanted to run. She should get out there and do it.
But there's still an overwhelming number of Democrats versus Republicans and independents in the state. Doesn't that make it a difficult race for any Republican?
Look, I've won 3 times in 2-to-1 Democratic districts. You know, it is absolutely possible if you make the case to New Yorkers, not based on party ideology, but based on the issues that cut across party lines.
So what are Kathy Hochul's vulnerabilities besides, you know, the fact that you've talked about out-migration and high taxes? There's got to be other things that you could criticize.
Where do we start?
I know. We haven't.
Look, you have obviously an affordability crisis in this state. Businesses are leaving. Wall Street is leaving. The fact that they're going to Palm Beach and Dallas and Salt Lake City and Atlanta, that is a big problem for New York long term. The spending in this state has increased by $100 billion in 10 years. That's insane. You can't sustain that, especially when your tax base is leaving. You look at a housing crisis, an energy crisis. They banned natural gas, blocked pipelines, shut down Indian Point. The grid today is dirtier 7 years later after the shutdown of Indian Point than prior to it. They have created a calamity across the board. And that's before you even get to public safety and the quality of life. They can sit here and cherry pick whatever stats they want. The fact is, crime is still a major problem in New York. You have the migrant crisis costing the state billions of dollars. You need to start to right the fiscal ship. You need to cut taxes, cut spending, focus on actually increasing domestic production of energy here in New York, deal with a real housing crisis that requires more supply, that requires free market principles. If you don't do that, this state is in real trouble.
So what piece of advice would you give whoever the Republican nominee is in terms of taking on Kathy Hochul? One piece of advice.
Look, you have to make the compelling case to every New Yorker, Democrats, independents, and Republicans. It's not enough just to be the most MAGA candidate in the race. You have to actually make the case to New Yorkers about how you are going to fix their lives and improve our state. And that really requires going into every community across New York and making that case. I've done it 3 times for a reason. I've built the coalitions you need to do, and that is critical if we're going to win in New York.
So appealing to independent voters is what you're saying.
Independents, Democrats, obviously the Republican and conservative base, but you have to go into every community and talk about these issues in a very real way about how they are impacting their families. At the end of the day, as I've said many times, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. We all want a good paying job to provide for our families, a quality education for our kids, access to housing and health care, and we want to live in safe neighborhoods. That's it. That's what the election is about.
So last question, what is with those socks?
I like colorful socks. It's great.
Beautiful socks. And my producer was wondering, why these?
I just pulled them out of the drawer. I have a whole host of them.
So you're the man of many colored socks?
Socks and ties. You gotta pop some color into it. That's what allows you to keep, the same suit.
A man with panache. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for joining us as well.